All right, I'm back with another new Scott interview. It's been a long time since I've done one of these, and you might actually be the last person I did do one with, and that's been like a year and a half now, like the summer of 2019, I think. How you
I
doing?
think, so. Yeah, and truthfully, you're the only guy I do these with. So
Yes,
I've been asked a bunch of times, and yeah, for the last couple of years, I'm like, if I'm not going to do it with New Scott, I'm not going to do
I appreciate that.
it.
So 2019 was a huge year for you. It was your first year that you just ran shows all by yourself all year long. I don't know how many people know this or not, but even when Ultimate Championship Wrestling was running in Riverview in 2019, that was all you. You were just using the Ultimate Championship Wrestling name. How your first show was in like March, I think, of 2019 that year to start it off. What was it like knowing in 2019 that it was going to be all you by yourself?
Before I answer that question, I'm gonna go. I have all these shows that I've had in 2019, so I'm gonna pull them up because I
Okay.
forget things.
Yeah.
And so yeah, there you go. Yeah, in March we started off. It was, I mean, it's always a transition that I've wanted to do. And I mean, I've been working for Chuck, running his shows for a little bit now. I can't even tell you when I started, probably 2016,
Yeah.
17, something
April
like
or that summer, 2016.
2016. Yeah. So right after the Matt Hardy show, whatever
Yeah.
that was, like maybe a show or two after that, I started. And then we had that big Halifax Forum show. So when 2017, I think that show was on.
Yeah.
So I've been running and booking events for him for a couple years, and he was super nice. Like we still have a good relationship to this day, even if I branched off and did my own thing. Like he helped me a lot. He kind of gave me the ball, and in return, like I didn't take advantage of him. I would never charge him extra money and keep money for myself or do all the crooked things that typical bookers would try to do. I would use all that money and bring in the guys that I thought like the Deckers, Marcos, and the Angels, and whoever, like the Smash guys. So I would always try to make those shows as best as possible. And even on some shows where the door wasn't good, I wouldn't even get paid. You know what I mean? I take my whatever money that he would give me, and I was just, well, it's either I don't get paid or somebody doesn't get paid, or all their POs the boys get their POs cut. So at that point, I just won't take a PO. But thankfully for me, that never happened too many times. It's only happened maybe once. So it's been good, man. It's been a learning process, and 2019 was a huge year for us. We had some ups, some downs, but more ups than downs. Definitely more ups than 2018. Uh, but yeah, now we're in 2020, so.
Yeah. This is a crazy year. But what was it like knowing in like 2019 that you were going to run? Did you? That was the first year you ran Riverview, right? Because you were doing IHW. You guys were both at the Moncton's Lions Club, right?
That's right.
And
Yep.
then you switched to Riverview.
Yeah, in March we made the full switch. Yeah, the last show was that November show where Silas Young and Riddick Stone, myself and Marco was on the card. Dynamite won that Maritime Championship. That was the last show we had at the Lions Club. Very good show, packed house. Still our best show in 2018 was the Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate show. I mean, that was packed to
Yeah.
the gills. That was great, and that was my first effort as a guy who's trying to run a show. So that was cool. So how I felt, I obviously felt nervous coming into 2019 in March in the new venue. I didn't know if people were going to follow. I was hoping. I knew our product was good, and but still, even going 25 minutes away from the city can be sometimes detrimental. Like we've seen it in Spryfield a couple times. If you go to Halifax and it's like people tend to come more than you go to Spryfield, well, you got to offer something pretty damn good for people to flock to Spryfield, right? So I felt that way, but thankfully, most people followed, and yeah, we were doing really well.
Now, you've brought in more name wrestlers than anyone else. You just mentioned like Pete Dunne, Tyler Bate, James Storms has been here, and Booker T has been here. The list goes on and on. What is it that you are able to do differently that is able to bring in these names? And you don't just bring in names that don't do anything. you bring in names that actually wrestle on the card.
Yeah.
How are you able to do that opposed to other people?
Me and Chuck had a thing where Chuck likes the WWE guys that sometimes come in and just appearances. Like Booker T came in at first and he was just going to do signings, but he liked our crew a lot, so he came in and did the promo and the Spinneroonie, which he hadn't done in like a year or two. So that was really cool. For me, I really like to bring guys that want to work, and I heard a couple people lately say like they want to bring like Maritimes to what they were before or whatever, and all those things, which I'm not even sure what that means. But people come to me like if I meet people outside when I travel and I contact them to come here and I tell them, listen, Maritime, it's expensive to get you in here. And truthfully, people come here like on like 50% of what they would usually make because they want to come here because they like our people, they like our they like our locker room. It's a good vibe. People from the outside looking in tend to try to judge us or whatever the case may be. But if you're inside, like we have a great locker room, people know it. We have great workers, people know it. So people travel from even like let's say Canadian guys from Toronto, they drive 16 hours and take a pay cut. Because I'm like, it's like one of those things where I want to have the best show. They still get paid, obviously. I'm not gonna, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean, and a lot of people come even to the Maritimes just to see it. I remember
Yeah,
the first time you didn't bring him in, but the first time Cody Deaner was here, or the second time or something, I picked him up, and the first thing he said was, "Take me to the ocean." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "I've never seen it." I'm like, "Okay." Like
yeah,
they'll come just to see the Maritimes, just because they hear how nice it is here.
yeah. It is nice here. I love it here.
Yeah.
I'm a Maritime guy. I always put it over. I never shit on the Maritimes. Wherever I go, I'm like, you know, if I like somebody and I feel like somebody like a James Storm, I
Yeah.
knew he would click right away with the boys. I'm like, James Storm's a cool guy. We got along super like well. I'm like, okay. So when I meet guys like that,
Yeah.
automatically Nick Aldis, I was like, oh, he'll click with the boys, and obviously Flip Gordon, those guys. I'm like, when I meet them, I'm like, okay, those guys will click. So I make an effort to reach out to them, and we always make deals. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I
Uh,
like that.
you mentioned something there that I've talked to quite a bit of people about recently. You talked about how people want to bring the Maritimes back to what it once was.
I'm not sure what they mean.
You said you don't know what that means. I'm pretty sure what they're talking about is that they don't like the new style of wrestling. And personally, I think it's because the people that don't like it are the people that can't do it. And
Yeah.
and you've proven that using those guys like the Channing Deckers and that those type of guys that they draw doing that. What are your thoughts when you hear people say that they want to bring it back to what it once was? And honestly, there was a giant gap in between shows drawing and shows not drawing in the Maritimes, like 10 years or more. Like you'd have the odd show that would draw, but on a consistent basis, it wasn't until the work rate here was upped considerably before we saw those crowds coming back.
Yeah. So, um, as a booker, as a maritimer, I love the classic maritime style. I love Leo Burke. I love the Beast. I love all those guys. And even after with RAW, and people say back to the Maritimes. If you look at RAW, there's a lot of hardcore stuff in
Oh,
RAW.
yeah, and that was the last time it really drew on a consistent basis.
Exactly. So again, back to what I don't know, but the point is, I like to have. If you look at matches, like let's take January for instance, the casino show. So there was a crazy four-way with Tarek, Tyson Dukes, Kevin Blanchard, and I forget what, Travis Toxic. And you knew these guys were going to kill it, like go crazy on that stuff, like just bang bang bang, let's go. But then after that, you had Me and Aldis, and Me and Aldis was a completely different match. It was a
Yeah,
30-minute kind of like let's back to wrestling.
yeah,
So that's why I like to offer it to a card is variety. I don't
yeah,
want to have just one, and then Channing Decker, Dick Durning, and Marco Estrada at the end
yeah,
just completely destroy the whole, just kill it. So I love that stuff. I love having a crazy match. I love having the speedy guys. I love having like a more of a hard hitting kind of old school type of match. I like all that stuff. You know
yeah.
what I mean? So I
I agree.
like implement.
Yeah, it's good to like mix it up. Have something for everybody that's on the show. You can have something for the older fans, something for the newer fans. You know, like mix up the show, and that way you'll get all of the fans in. But that
Yeah.
you
I want
let's
to say
say
one more thing.
yeah.
If somebody is coming and looking in and saying that, they have no idea what the fuck they're talking about. If they're looking at one of my shows that I book and they're like, "Oh, I missed the old school stuff or the old maritime wrestling," they have no idea what they're talking about. They really have no idea. And I've heard people try to say that, "Oh, the people I talk to laugh at us." I'm like, then you're talking to stupid people.
Yeah.
We're talking to people that I don't talk to that don't mean anything. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
No,
Whatever.
I
I
agree. I mean, I've been to
this place. We've elevated maritime wrestling like it hasn't been in a long time, especially in Canada.
yeah.
Like no offense, but the Maritimes was just like okay, you had Ontario and Quebec, and you had some out west stuff, and you had some maritime stuff, but most people had no idea what was going on in the Maritimes. Now they do. Now
Yeah.
they do.
No, I agree. I have more people from other parts of Canada and other parts of the United States now that message me and ask me like who's this guy, who's that guy, because they see them now because they go to my channel and they may not necessarily have seen Channing Decker before
Yeah,
or any of those guys. The majority of the guys you bring in have never been seen in the Maritimes before, and
yeah.
people are really in enjoying seeing them. Now, how you haven't really talked too much about how that big casino show came about in January of this year, I guess. Man, that seems like forever ago. That seems like years ago right now. In January this year, you booked the Moncton Casino, something that's never been done before for a pro wrestling show. I've been there for bodybuilding shows, and I'm like, there's no way this is gonna go. Like, how's he gonna do this? But I remember get there, I saw the setup. It was a high level independent wrestling setup, something you would expect to see on pay per view or something along those lines. I was blown away. How did all
Thanks.
that come about for you?
Funny. Well, funny enough, you wouldn't know this, but some people actually like me. Um,
No
so
way. No
I
way.
know it's kind of a weird thing. It's a weird thing, and I have connections here and there. And somebody approached me, say, "Hey, have you ever thought about doing that?" And they work there, and I'm like, "Of course," but it's not as going to having a casino show is not as easy as going to the casino and say, "Hey, I want a show."
Right.
Because they're going to be like, well, who the hell are you? Like, obviously, they need to get paid. So there's a lot of stuff that comes into to play when booking a big venue like this, like the venue that I'm sure we're going to talk about in
Yeah.
March, the Capitol Theater. That's a big deal as well. So I just kind of step by step went up, talked to different people, and then we made a deal that was good for both of us. And from there, obviously, I contacted Dave Cawley and the Hub City guys that I've known for over a decade, and they helped me film it. Now, obviously, with the sound guy and the video guy that the casino had, which are top level because all they do is like big events and big musical acts and comedy acts and whatever UFC, not UFC, but the MMA stuff that they do there. So they knew how to make it look good. So I just went to talk to them. We had a couple meetings, and we just made it as nice as we possibly could, and I think we succeeded. I think we succeeded very well.
Oh, it was by far the nicest setup I've ever seen for an indie show here. Like nothing, I don't even know what would be a close second. It was super nice. But were you
Thanks.
nervous that like you got to seat like 800 people or something you got for that show? Is
Yeah.
that about right? Were you nervous? Because the ticket prices were
Wow.
very
Yeah.
high compared to normal shows, but they sold pretty quick. But before they sold, were you nervous that like people aren't going to pay $60 to come see the same thing they're paying $20 for in Riverview?
Yeah, of course. I mean, oh yeah, especially like like if all in what wasn't already taken, then that would have been the name of my show because it
Right.
was an all in type of show.
Yeah.
It's all the money that I made from all the other shows were put into this show, and just roll the dice. But I really had confidence. Like we had 3 months to build up, to kind of promote it, and just the card that came around it. We had a lot of different options. A lot of different things came into play. We had different names. We had big names that didn't materialize, but we ended up with Nick Aldis, which was one of my first picks. Brian Cage, who the classic Brian Cage that we don't even have to, talk about. And
Sure we
then
do.
for the
We'll get
wrestling,
there.
for me, it's like the best Canadian guys I could possibly find, and I think we did that. So yes, it was very nerve-wracking for the tickets. And at first, yes, they sold well, and people complain about the $60 price tag, and I knew they were going to, which is, I mean, it's just a classic thing.
Yeah.
And I've heard all the things. I've seen all the screenshots about it'll never work. It'll be a flop. All those things. But when you get a check and it says 20 something 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 on it, then pretty cool.
It was a 5-0 check, right?
Yeah. Just 4 zeros, but
Just four
still.
zeros? All right. There was a number there. That's right.
Yeah.
Um, talk about Brian Cage. You've booked him to come here 3 different times. He's yet to be here. Like I think he was legitimately injured one of the times, maybe. But
He was, but
what's the
then
deal?
that night that he was supposed to come here, he wrestled in a cage match in closer to home.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, that rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. That was the second time he canceled. The first time was an Impact thing. It was the first. Funny enough, the first show we had in Riverview. It was supposed to be myself, Marco, and Brian Cage. And last minute they had but maybe a week before, Impact was trying to get him because they needed him, and Brian Cage was like, no, I'll do your show because I told you. And I said, okay, cool. And then the powers that be at Impact contacted me personally and said, hey, we need Brian Cage. But I said, man, I have a show, and we're like a week and a half away or whatever it was. So they scrambled and they said, well, we have Eli Drake for you. And I'm like, that's cool. I'm okay with that. I'll take that. I'll if a company needs somebody really bad because they're pushing Brian Cage at the time, which is 100% cool, and they needed to use him, that's fine. But you gotta send me something. So they did, and it kind of worked out well. And the second time he was injured, but then he wrestled that cage match like that night. So I'm like, okay. So and then the third time was this one, and he was I think he was injured, but the whole thing was he was signing. He was in the middle of signing between TNA and AEW,
Right.
and so he just stayed home.
It worked out. I mean, Flip Gordon is probably better than Brian Cage would have been anyway.
Yeah, that was cool. It was nice to Flip. Yeah, but you know what? It would have been nice because I don't know if you know what a last minute ticket from Hartford costs, but it's not they're not cheap. So yeah, it definitely. So we had to pay obviously for Brian Cage, that plane tickets out the door, and then we had to add a new one, last minute one. So it would have been nice to not spend that extra whatever thousands of dollars, but it was a nice surprise to start off the show. I mean, Flip Gordon. I mean, when I look back at it, it worked out perfectly.
What was it like to bring the NWA championship here for the first time since the 70s and be the person to wrestle for that championship?
Well, I love to put myself over, brother. You know what I mean? So that's it was a big deal. And again, it's not one of those things that you can just call NWA and be, hey, I want to wrestle for the title. It's not as simple as it. You can ask a lot of promotions that have tried to get an NWA championship match. It's just not that easy. So I knew Nick Aldis. We wrestled on a couple shows, not together, but we're on a couple shows together. And I got his emailed him, but then I had to email the NWA guys. So back and forth, and I just showed them what we were doing and what this event was, and what kind of event it was, and who was on the show. And so they agreed, and we kind of. So for me, when the deposit was sent out, and I knew he was coming, that was a big deal. That was a big get. That's one of those gets where it's a big name, or the title is a big. Nick Aldis is a name, and plus that title itself can sell some tickets.
Yeah.
Because it is a big deal. And so that was a big get for us. I thought that was like a big deal, and I needed a marquee match because it is my hometown. So for his style, I'm like, that's perfect for me. So that was kind of what we based the show for me around. And then with we had Brian Cage. My whole deal was definitely the main event be Durning, Decker, and Marco, because I knew those three guys I think are brilliant.
Yeah.
I think there's some of the best in Canada, if not the best in Canada. Those three guys, in their different ways, So So I had that main event already set. I had myself, and I needed somebody for Tyson Dukes. So at first it was him and Brian Cage, and then, or who was, no, man, wait, was it Riddick and Brian Cage, or was it Tyson Duke and Brian
I
Cage?
think it was Riddick and Brian Cage, and then Josh
And
got
Riddick got,
hurt, and then you
yeah, so
switched it.
Tyson Dukes.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. There's levels to this. At first it was Riddick Stone versus Brian Cage. Riddick Stone got injured, so we got Tyson Dukes. I'm like, Tyson Dukes are already going to be on the show, but I think he's going to work either Matt Angel or some, which would have been a nice match too. But so we had to switch things around. I'm like, Tyson Dukes and Brian Cage is a great match, but then the Brian Cage fell out, so I put this four-way together, and then Flip versus Matt Angel, which Flip with Matt Angel wasn't a four-way before, but Flip and Matt Angel, to me, I'm like, these guys are going to work well together.
Yeah.
So those, cards subject to change, I guess. And
Were you happy with how the match with all this turned out?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, sure. We didn't plan anything. Like we had the ending, which I love that stuff. We can go with a professional and just. I knew his work, and funny enough, like he knew my work, the double stomp stuff. He knew he did his homework coming in, so he was cool with going out there and calling most of the stuff out, and I was too. And we just had the ending, with the titles and stuff, and that was it.
Awesome. Okay, so
So
2020 with
to go 30 minutes plus with a guy with a champion, and have a pretty decent match. That's to me, that's something to be like. Not even talk about spots. You know what I mean? That's something to be proud of for me. I
yeah,
like that stuff. You know what I mean? So,
absolutely. I don't think there's a lot of people that there, and this isn't just me blowing smoke. There's not a lot of people that could do that that aren't comfortable to do that. There might be people out there that could do it, but there's not a lot of people out there that are comfortable enough to go and do it. You know what I mean? You got to have that level of confidence.
yeah,
So 2020 was supposed to be the huge year for North Pro Wrestling. You're going national. You're that's the goal.
national baby.
That's the goal. So, but 2020 was going to be the first year the North Pro name was thrown out there. You had all these shows planned. You ran like 50, 60 shows in 2019. You're going to do
Yep.
more than that in 2020. And then, the world stops. COVID-19. Every show is
Yep.
canceled pretty much. What were your initial thoughts when you first heard there's this disease and it's slowing things down before it was brought to a halt? What were your initial thoughts?
Well, first off, we had a March 14th show planned with the main event was Decker versus Durning in a death match, our
Yeah.
first death match. We sold 250 some tickets, close to 260 pre-sale, which is very good for our just regular rear review shows. So we were super stoked going that, but ramping up, it was leading more and more towards, I think 3 days before, well, even before 3 days before, like weeks before, a lot more people were talking about it. They're talking about canceling basketball and hockey. And I was obviously getting nervous for not only, obviously for that show, but for like the uncertainty of what was going on. And it was definitely a point where on March 11th, basketball announced that they were canceling everything. Mid-match, I think it was the Thunder or something. They just canceled the match and everyone went home, and that was that. And since then, I mean, we have basketball now, but it's whatever. So for us, 3 days later, the Maritimes were still open, but people were talking about closing down. And we had a show, like I just said, with Durning and Decker in the main event, and we had, I think, Tabernacle Team coming down. We had like a big show planned.
Yeah.
And the day before, the boys from Montreal, which I completely understood, said, "Hey, we don't know what's going on. We don't want to take the risk. So we're just going to stay home." So I lost my entire card the day before the March 14th show. But with the uncertainty coming up, it was very important for me to run that show. The risk wasn't there, like huge risk yet.
Yeah.
But I knew coming on, like, if this is ramping up the way it is, who knows when we can run a show again. So it was very important for me to run that show, just for us to be together, the boys to be together one more time. And we scrambled. And even on the 260 tickets that we sold, I think maybe only 175 showed up. Nobody asked for their money back, which I would have gladly kind of passed it on to them, but people just understood, like it was just kind of one of those situations. And so it was very nerve-wracking. but we threw a very fun show for everybody, and I don't think I know Dynamite and Dick main evented that show, and it was really good. They killed it. You were there, yeah. So,
Oh yeah.
um, so it was intense, but it was nice to, you know, just kind of to have that last show. I think we're probably the last wrestling show in Canada, like with a crowd
I
before everything
I
went down.
think so. I think for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Talk about the opening match that night.
oh, this is so funny, and I'm gonna do shit to Emily forever for this. It's so we're scrambling. I forget who I was supposed to work. Maybe I was supposed to work Hoobly actually. That's one of the matches that stayed how it was supposed to go. And so Hoobly, being funny as he is, he brought the hazmat suit with him, the whole gimmick, and so he's funny. He's great. I love Hoobly, as you do as well. And so
Greatest
we
of
did
all
the
time.
thing. Yeah, so we did the thing where I rip this stuff off mid-match, and it's funny. People are laughing because it's a different showdown. It's not as intense as it's more like let's throw some comedy in there to get people kind of laughing and having a good time. So that's what we did, and the finish was still me winning. One, two, three, just easy whatever match. But for some reason, and Emily knew this, and for some reason, Hooli hit me with whatever, and then Hoopy covers me, and Emily goes, 1, 2, and we watched it back that night, and so she knows. I kick out at 2. It's not even like a big falls. It's like 2.5, not even 2 3/4. Kick out, and Emily goes, 3. And I'm like, what? And the music hits. What the hell? She's like, oh crap. She looks at me. He's like, no, it was 2. I'm like, no, it's over. It's over. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's 3. But yeah, just counted to 3. So it was one of those moments where it's just funny. You know what I
Oh
mean? What
yeah.
am I
No,
going to do?
that's why I
Start
want you
the
to tell the story.
match? Yeah, I'm going to restart the match so I can win? No. You just
Yeah.
got to go with the flow and have a laugh at it.
It's the
That's it.
Riverview screw job.
That's right. They had it planned out the whole time. Yeah, that's what it was.
Too bad the belt wasn't on the line. Um,
Nice.
so after that show, wrestling stopped everywhere outside WWE and AEW. But
Yeah.
locally here, it was done. What
Done.
uh what were you thinking then?
Well, it was tough at first, obviously, like something you work for 16 years, work your ass off for 60, well, let's say I've been in for 16, 17 years, but I've been really working my ass off for the last 7 years, and especially the last 5 to bring, to get to this point. Finally, we're up and running, and it kind of comes crashing down. So I can't complain too much like other businesses that are going through it because I'm not paying some ridiculous amount for storage or like, I don't have a restaurant or a bar. So it's okay, you know. Obviously it sucks, but people are going through way worse than what we are. So I can just kind of let my body recuperate, let my mind recuperate. This summer was tough for many different reasons. I that was this summer is probably one of the toughest times of my life, and but coming after that was probably the most relaxing time and that I've had. And I found something, whatever the case, whatever you want to say. I kind of went away from the world for 4 months or 3 months, whatever the case may be, and that was good. And I've been kind of good since. I've been good. Obviously, I'm looking forward to running shows and getting back to the grind of things. But I finally was able to relax for a few months.
Now, before we get to 2021, I just want to ask you one more question about something that happened a while ago. The IHW ran an all women's tournament in the summer of 2019. You were there to support your friends and such. What were your thoughts on that show?
It's good.
Yeah.
Are you trying to get something out of me? I'm not sure.
No,
Like,
not at all. I just want to know your thoughts. It was the first all-woman show held in the Maritimes.
no, yeah, I liked it. I like women's wrestling, so
Not
yeah, I thought,
everything has a spoon.
yeah. I'm like, did I say something?
No.
No, I mean Emily Parker was wrestling the show, which was
Yep.
very important to her. So us as as friends, I was definitely going there to support her for sure,
Yeah.
100%. And they had some really good matches. I mean, Saraya Knight was there, and she's a killer. So it was good for some. Like I think Jazz worked her in the first round, and Jazz did really good.
Yeah.
I forget who she worked in the second round, either Chantel or Maddie, probably.
I think it was Madison. I think. I'm not sure, but yeah.
Anyways, yeah, Raya was there, so she's great.
She's legitimately scary. Like as a performer out there, there was guys like when you see like a smaller person get up to a bigger fan's face, you're like, oh, whatever. She was up in like bigger dudes' faces. I'm like, I'm scared for that man.
Oh, she'll hit you. I've seen her hit. It's tough. She's really tough. Um, no, I liked it. Yeah, I thought they did really good. Yeah, fuck yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so February 13th, 2021, North Pro returns to it's a theater in downtown Moncton, right?
It is. Yeah, it's like a
How did you
store.
that venue looks beautiful.
It's
How did I've heard other people have tried to get it over the years, have been unsuccessful. How did you get it?
same way as a casino, just contacts. I worked for. I do trivia on Wednesdays because I love it, and I met somebody that worked, one of the higher ups from the Capitol Theater at a trivia event. And then I did their Christmas party as a trivia host, and I got them all drunk, and it was a fun time. And I got that contact that way. And I decided to call them maybe a couple months, 2 months, 3 months ago now. And that's how it got started. It was tough. It wasn't easy. To this day, like even a couple days ago, we went through some stuff where people see that stigma of wrestling, just see wrestling and like, oh crap, like they think it's gonna be rowdy and like, oh, we need
Yeah,
to have extra security. Um, so it's but then we show them the footage. Like that's why going to the casino was so important because I can show that footage and be like, no, 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 like we're professional. You know what I mean? Like this is what we do. And then obviously I work closely with NSPW, and I love those guys. And Steve is a great friend of mine. And we worked at La Diamant before, which I main evented twice, by the way, which is not a big deal. But anyway. Uh, so the Diamant in Quebec is a new facility. It's a theater just like the Capitol Theater. So again, I had all those contacts before going in, and like all the concerns was like, oh well, oh wrestling, well we're not really a wrestling type of place. So I'm like, well, show them the casino stuff and be like, oh, we're legit. You know what I mean? We're not like just running rec centers all the time. We
yeah,
do big shows, we do them well, and then plus I show them the theater stuff. It's like, hey, the Diamant's a brand new facility, and it was a hit for them. It was one of the best. Like, what I mean, they want them almost every month now because they're doing so well. Well, not now, but after it happened.
yeah.
So I had that in the banks back to back, and they agreed, and here we are. So I'm super excited. February 13th. It's an 800 seater. I'll break the news to you here if I don't. Well, it depends when this comes out, but we can only fit 250 people with the restrictions. We're hoping because some vaccines are coming in. I'm not sure if they're going to slack it or not. I'm not sure what's going to happen. But let's just say 250 to 300 tickets is what they're aiming for. So, so that's what we're doing. It's a step in the door for that venue as well for later on. And so now we have we have we have the casino, we have the Capitol Theater, and we have the rec center. So we're
That's
set up in
awesome.
Moncton.
And for people that don't know who might be new to like going to wrestling in a theater because it hasn't really been done here before. Well, it hasn't been done here before.
Well,
The closest thing would be Albany Landing for what people
yeah,
have seen,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
it's huge in the United Kingdom, right? They run
yeah,
theaters all the time over
exactly. Well, that's where I kind of got the original idea was it doesn't really get done here like I guess Kaizen doesn't. But in England, it's really like 70% of the venues
there.
are theater settings. Old theaters. You're set up on the stage, and people are just kind of and it's always badass. So
Yeah, it looks
thankfully,
fantastic. Like I
yeah,
absolutely love how that looks.
yeah. So it's gonna look super cool, and I assume you'll be there too, unless
Oh
something
yeah.
crazy happens.
Oh yeah.
Exactly.
I'll be there, man. I'll come quarantine at your house for like 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly
That's
what
my
happened.
next question. With quarantining, what
Yeah.
can people expect to see as a roster? Because a lot of your roster comes from Quebec, comes from Ontario, other parts of Canada, and right now New Brunswick has a 14-day quarantine thing. Like Nova Scotia doesn't. We're the only one that doesn't right now, which is weird because earlier this year we were the first to have it. So, but now we don't. So what can they expect in terms of a roster if it stays like it does right now?
Well, we it can't. I mean, if it stays like it does now, then we can't have a show. We're definitely expecting for the Nova Scotia border to be open and the
Yeah.
PEI and the Newfoundland to be open. And that's what we expect to go
Yeah.
back to the maritime bubble. Our case, we're all in yellow now in New Brunswick, which you guys are not there yet, I don't think.
You guys went in the lockdown for quarantine stuff. We don't have to do anything like that here. We just have to wear masks, but we've had to wear masks since like March.
But I mean, gyms aren't open or anything,
Oh, no,
right?
no, no. Gyms aren't open. Gyms and
So this,
theaters aren't open, and that's about all that's closed, I think. Like malls
okay.
are still open, grocery stores are still open. Everything else, it's just movie theaters and gyms. Restaurants are open for takeout. You can't dine in, but
Okay.
that just that.
So, well, so that we're expecting it to reopen,
Yeah,
obviously.
the
Uh,
numbers are dropping considerably every day,
yeah.
so it's good.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, right here we're good now. I expect in January. Well, who knows? I'm not sure what I'm expecting. I'm hoping it stays pretty clean and nobody goes crazy, and we can have an event on February 13th. But the beautiful thing is, I think the tickets go on sale Friday. We can break that here as well. Um, and I didn't want to do anything with selling the tickets, and thankfully they take care of everything. They have their own system. So if the show's canceled, people get a refund automatically.
That's the best way
So
to do it. Like that's
that,
fantastic.
that's
Yeah,
at this point, like I'm not gonna mess around with like just regular. Like typically, we just people will pay us, we give them tickets, we have their name at the door, no problem. You know what I
yeah.
mean? It's not like we're selling out thousands of people. But this one, with everything that's going on, they're selling tickets. So if people want them, you get them. And if anything happens that it shuts down or we can't have a show, then just I think you have the option of waiting until the next show or getting your money back.
So
And
if this, let's just say worst case scenario, February 13th gets postponed, there
yeah,
will still be a show there, just at a later date.
yeah, we have an April date too, and then a June date, and then so we just have dates. Not saying that there'll be another show in April, but if the February show doesn't
Right.
happen, it just rolls over
Those
to the
those are your backup dates. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But we're hoping February comes and we can have a show because we're going to be building to some fun stuff and that stuff that I can't talk about now, but it's all been working on, and it's going to be nice. I'm very excited for that. That's the next step. What are we going to do in 2020? I forget.
Go
Oh, we're going
national.
to go national, baby. So it's just step by step. Obviously, we took a giant, but everyone took a giant leap back. You know what I mean? It's not like I took a step back and everyone kept going. It's just everyone just shot back.
Yeah.
Uh, so we're all the same pace now. So I'm hoping February show goes along. Hopefully, we'll be back at the rec center this summer. Obviously, I mean, always in close contact with them when things open up. And they just fixed their facility as well. They took the opportunity to fix their light section, like everything. So we're excited to get back in there. And then, we'll get to work.
How do people get tickets for you said they probably go on sale Friday. They just
Yeah.
call Capitol Theater, or do they have a website or in person or?
So typically you could buy them online, but with everything that's going on, so all the tickets will be available. So all the seats will be available. So what they do, and they go by, okay, well, let's say I take a bubble of 5 wants this row, then all the seats around them are now unavailable. So that's how they're going to work.
Okay.
So it's you can call or you can show up in person. That's how you buy tickets.
Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that we haven't touched on?
No, man, like, I appreciate it. Like I said, it was a crazy summer, and I appreciate you kind of like still being cool and going through the crazy shit with me. So,
Always,
uh,
man. I mean, I don't know why. I don't know why anybody would think I wouldn't. I've known you for 16 years or something. Like
time, man.
we've been friends for a long time. Like you said, I know you. I know what to believe and what not to believe. You know what I mean? So
It's
I don't pay attention to any of it. I treat people how they treat me. You've always been really, really good to me. I mean, I absolutely stick by you, man.
I appreciate that very much, Harold. Like I said, 2021. I'm not looking for January 1st to everything will be back to normal, obviously, but we're stepping in the right direction.
Yeah.
And everybody out there, listen, I know it's tough, man. I'm gonna talk to everybody that's listening that kept listening to this point. I know life is tough, and I'm talking to a lot of people where it's like especially people that aren't in relationships, don't are not living with anybody. I understand, man. You're getting fucking lonely, and just keep on keeping on. Just hold on, man. Everything is getting back on track, and just don't give up. You know, we've seen a big spike in mental health issues, and all we can do is just hold on. Don't do anything rash. Just hold on, and we'll get there.
How can people find North Pro Wrestling online?
It's anything, basically anything but, sorry, Facebook and Instagram is North Pro Wrestling, and YouTube is just North Pro.
Awesome. I'll throw the links in the description anyway.
Thanks, buddy.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank you for taking the time out to do this interview. It's been at least a year and a half. I mean, I haven't seen you since March, I don't think, which is a long time. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
I sure hope February happens. I can't wait. I can't wait to be there and see it. I'm super pumped for it.
I appreciate it, and let positive thoughts, man. It's gonna happen, my friend.
Yeah. All right, man. Take care. Hopefully I'll see you soon.
Hell yeah.